The rational zero theorem. If a polynomial has integer coefficients and p over q, in reduced form, is a rational zero of that polynomial, then p is a factor of the constant term and q is a factor of the leading coefficient. To list all the possible rational zeros, find the factors of p and the factors of q, and write all rational numbers of the form p over q. Let's look at an example. If we want to list all possible rational zeros of the polynomial p of x given here, what we need to do is find a list of all possible p's and all possible q's, and then divide them. Let's list out the possible p's. Our theorem tells us that p is a factor of the constant term. So that means p is going to divide -8. So we want to find all of the factors of -8. Well, what divides evenly into -8? Plus or minus 1 divides evenly. Plus or minus 2 divides evenly. Plus or minus 4 divides evenly. And plus or minus 8 divides evenly into -8. All of these numbers, if you divide 8 by them, you'll get an integer. Let's list the possible q's. The rational zero theorem tells us that q is a factor of the leading coefficient. So that means q is going to be a factor of 3. So what are the factors of 3? Plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 3. 3 is prime, so those are the only factors. Now, to find all the possible rational zeros, we take all the possible p's and divide them by all the possible q's. So, what is our list of possible p's over q's? So let's start with this one. If I take plus or minus 1 and divide by plus or minus 1, I'll get plus or minus 1. If I take plus or minus 2 divided by plus or minus 1, I'm just going to get plus or minus 2. Same thing for plus or minus 4. Plus or minus 4 divided by 1 is plus or minus 4. Plus or minus 8 divided by 1 is plus or minus 8. Now I'll take the same numbers up here and divide it by the next one. So plus or minus 1 divided by plus or minus 3 is plus or minus 1/3. Plus or minus 2 divided by plus or minus 3 is plus or minus 2/3. Plus or minus 4 divided by plus or minus 3 is plus or minus 4/3. And finally, plus or minus 8 divided by plus or minus 3 is plus or minus 8/3. If you notice, since you always have a plus or minus on the top and the bottom, you only really need one. So we can just take plus or minus 1 and divide it by positive 1, and plus or minus 2 and divide it by 3, and get the same list. This is an exhaustive list of the possible rational zeros of p of x. How about you guys list all the possible rational zeros of this polynomial?